Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today to talk about 5 ways to save in the procurement process. My name is Foy Maynor. I'm the VP of Sales for Paramount Workplace, and I'm going to be walking you through the presentation today to tell you a little bit more about Paramount Workplace, what we see as trends in the automation of procurement, both from our experience as well as what we've learned from industry analysis and our customers. And then we're going to walk through the 5 ways to save in the procurement process, spend a little bit of time showing you the actual solution itself, and then give you some links as well as visual calculators to help you know how much you and your organization could be saving. As I mentioned, my name is Foy Maynor. I've been with Paramount since February of 2002, so I've been here for a little over 17 years. Paramount as a company was founded in 1995, so April will be our 24th year of business, and we're actually headquartered in metropolitan Detroit and have offices around the U.S. and Canada. I personally am located just outside of Atlanta, Georgia, and I do have other sales as well as consulting resources in those other remote locations, but our quality assurance, our support, and our development are located in that metropolitan Detroit office. And what we do is provide spend management solutions. So for us, that is certainly requisition and procurement, which we're going to cover today. And then you may also see, if you do some research on our website, that we do AP automation, as well as expense management as natural extensions of what we started doing on the procurement side of things. And these solutions are offered via mobile apps as well as browser or web-based solutions in order to be able to access and do any of the functionality involved. Now, it is truly a horizontal application, meaning that any organization that needs to be able to manage their spend can recognize significant improvements to the bottom line and a return on investment by doing a better job with their spend management, especially in the procurement area. However, there's about 14 different industries that we've seen particular success in, either a lot of customers, really good success stories that are available on our website, or a natural fit for the needs of these industries. So those industries are indicated here on the screen. And for industries like nonprofits, utilities, state and local governments, procurement is a natural extension of what they need to be able to do as a part of their business, meaning there's controls. They must be able to manage their spend. They must be able to account for where the money's being spent and be able to address that spending during an approval process rather than at the end, rather than asking for forgiveness rather than permission. And then we've also done very well as well in sports and entertainment industries, as well as professional services with some of the things that we do, healthcare, life sciences, and also in the casino and gaming industry has been a particular success for us as well. So I show you these just so that you know where we might be a better fit, not necessarily because other industries can't use spend management or procurement solutions, but these are the ones where we have really good stories to tell. So even if you don't see yourself listed here, that doesn't mean we would not apply, and we're definitely willing to discuss that with you. Now, we do offer our solution as standalone, where we can be the procurement system of record and handle all of the information within our application. But certainly the best impact is realized with our seamless out-of-the-box integration to Sage solutions as well as Sage Intacct solutions. When you are integrated to the back office system, then you're able to use the vendors, the GL accounts, as well as other functionality that's located there and validate that at the very beginning of the process. From the time that you enter the requisition, you're able to see and know that you're using the proper vendors, the proper GL accounts, and you're not going to have to worry about them being invalid or inactive once the information has been fully approved and matched and then is ready to go over into the back office. So integration is key, but also keep in mind that if you've got yourselves in transition between one solution and another and you need a solution to help manage spend in the interim, that can certainly be handled as well. We are an international organization, so we do support multiple currencies as well as multiple languages as a part of the product. Like many software companies, we do a major annual release, and we also do minor point releases throughout the year as needed. Workplace 2018 is the current release and the release that I'll be demoing to you today. And this is a web-based application accessed via multiple browsers, Safari, Firefox, Chrome, Internet Explorer, Edge, as well as devices that are able to run the app for both iPhone as well as Android devices. And the overall idea is throughout the entire process to provide deep visibility anywhere, anytime, easily for everybody that needs to access the application, where they're entering a requisition, approving requisition, or just simply need to see where those transactions are. And because of the different visibility that we offer anytime, anywhere, there's many authentication modes that are supported to ensure you that your information is secure and that the person is logging in is who that they are supposed to be. Now, when we talk about manual procurement, it means that your staff spends a lot of time on tasks such as obtaining quotes, creating requisitions, routing them for approval, maintaining vendor compliance, matching invoices to purchase orders, receiving documents, managing exceptions, entering invoices, and general management and oversight. And that tends to always be, again, a manual process. So you're using pieces of paper, Excel spreadsheets, or even emails to do those different functions. You're having to rekey or re-enter information. You're not validating the information to what's over in your ERP. So naturally, it takes longer to perform each of these tasks. The more each purchase order or invoice costs the company, because of you're doing it manually. And it's been difficult to estimate those indirect costs. So before you look at implementing a procure-to-pay solution, it makes sense to analyze the potential return on investment. So you need to ask yourself and answer questions such as, what are you spending? What are you spending it on? Where do savings opportunities lie by automating a process? And can you quantify those savings? So you're going to look at what are the first steps towards automation. But as you see from the slide here, when you're doing manual procurement, you're very busy. There's a lot of stuff on your desk just focused on getting the transactions through and maybe not being able to do your actual job. So when you talk about automating procurement, you're going to improve visibility into your spending company-wide, gain insight into current and planned expenditures from a single place, a single source, which is going to allow you to increase productivity so that your employees can spend more time on strategic tasks and less on manual data entry and paper chasing. You're going to reduce that paperwork because electronic procurement digitizes the purchasing process by reducing or eliminating the need for paper. You can certainly still attach documents, but those are going to be attachments of the files that can be a part of the process. You're not going to have to worry about spilling coffee on the paper, losing the paper getting accidentally thrown in the trash, because you're going to have everything in one single location, automated and visible to the users. And this is going to allow you to have faster transaction speeds because you're going to automate the workflows. You're going to provide alerts as well as reminders to keep process moving and identify and eliminate bottlenecks. And with all of this, you're going to be able to bolster your buying power. When you centralize corporate purchasing, you can benefit from quantity discounts and better payment terms with your vendors. You're also going to get increased accuracy because you're going to eliminate those manual touch points. You eliminate the opportunity for errors. And you have rules within the application to prevent the most routine mistakes. So as you can see with the graphic, the desk is much cleaner, allowing the person to focus on their day-to-day jobs and do a better job with their day-to-day activities as well, rather than having to chase and focus on paper-based, email-based, or Excel-based processes. So when you look at streamlining the requisition process, you want to make sure that it's friendly, efficient, and mobile. So we know that when a process is cumbersome and complex, people will naturally look for ways to avoid it. So you need to work to make your internal requisition process friendly and efficient so that the employees are encouraged to use it. In addition to make it easy, provide access via their mobile devices so that they can submit requisitions and monitor the status of those transactions from their smartphones and tablets. You empower the employees with the ability to create requisitions from their mobile device. They can accomplish these tasks on their schedule, whenever and wherever they are working, And in addition, with the mobile capabilities, you're enabling the authorized personnel to view and approve those requisitions from their team while they're on the go. And again, you're speeding the process, driving efficiencies, and mobile solutions have been found to increase user adoption rates, which is a key driver of return on investment in your procurement solution. So again, that's one of the main focuses nowadays, is how do you make it easy for the user but still have all the necessary controls in place to catch those exceptions throughout the process. So when you look at automation and integration, there's several different benefits. You're going to have integration between those different siloed departments. You're going to have better communication because there's going to be visibility throughout the whole entire process of where those transactions are. And that's throughout the entire organization. That's both with the purchasing and procurement department as well as the accounts payable department. We often find that even organizations that have adopted some type of automated procurement, when you don't include accounts payable, there still can be significant delays because accounts payable doesn't know whether or not that invoice should be paid or not. So they'll waste time going back and researching it. Whereas if you link them and allow them to be a part of the overall process, then they can immediately see that the invoice is correct and know that it was approved. And then you're giving more visibility into cost throughout the entire process. And with all this, you lower your procurement processing costs because you're lowering the time that people spend on it. And you're also improving those relationships with the vendors to get better deals and better terms from them. So we're going to look to centralized purchasing. Centralized purchasing is one of the single most important ways to reduce unmanaged spend. When purchasing is decentralized, it's difficult to grasp the scale of your spending. And if you can't accurately assess what's being spent on what and by whom, how can you manage it effectively? Centralized spending increases your company's purchasing power and helps you achieve economies of scale. It also makes it easier to provide careful scrutiny of suppliers and their contracts. So when you're decentralized, you've got widespread or remote employees making their purchases. You don't have visibility to those from one central location. Goods are often attained without purchase orders and certainly without requisitions. So there's no approval process, and you're maybe not getting those goods from the best supplier at the best price. And as I mentioned earlier, your accounts payable department is left wondering, what's going on here? I've got to go research and find out if this purchase was approved. Is the cost correct before I can pay the vendor? And obviously, if you don't pay your vendors in a timely and efficient manner, you can have a negative impact on that relationship. Or the reverse, when you do pay them in a timely and effective and efficient manner, then you can certainly improve those relationships and get better deals with those particular vendors. So when we talk to organizations, both again with analysts that we work with, as well as in our own experience, and we talk to them about how integrated their departments are, as you can see, almost 50% of organizations are totally separate from their procurement and AP functions. Then you've got others who have some common leadership, completely integrated, or even shared leadership where they're able to see information. So the opportunity for enabling automated procurement solutions is certainly out there. Again, even if you're doing something on the front side, the purchasing side of things to automate, if you're not linking the two together, if you're not integrating to your back office, then you are missing opportunities to save money. And when we talk about approving the spend, one of the things you want to do is keep it simple. You want to identify the variables in the process. The simpler the approval process, the better. If you overly complicate the approval process, you're going to slow down the cycle and you're going to frustrate employees, again, who may seek ways to bypass the actual requisition process. So you can establish multiple approval workflows with different levels of complexity depending upon the details of the requisition. Some of the variables you might want to consider are purchases over a certain dollar amount, purchases related to a certain project or department, purchases associated with general ledger accounts, or even a certain expense types. You can monitor and approve for just certain vendors, and those will allow you to have the controls in place for those exceptions. And you got to ask the right questions when you're designing your workflow as well. So designing a requisition approval workflow does certainly require thought and consideration and input from those people that are going to be impacted. And there's many factors to consider. So what if any of the transactions can be automatically approved? Are you using catalogs? Are you using vendor contracts? Are you using shopping or favorites list? And those transactions could be either automatically approved or have a much shorter approval process because they may only need to go to the department manager. So if you're getting them from an approved vendor or from an approved list or catalog, then they may be able to move through the process much quicker. Then you want to look at who is required to review and approve those. You can have multiple workflows consisting of a different set of approvers. In fact, we offer unlimited levels of approval and unlimited approval paths, and you can approve based upon who the user is, what's their role within the organization, and then things like department, line item information, the vendor, the actual item that's being purchased, and determine who needs to approve those without bogging down the process. And then you want to look at what is the process when an approver is not available or unresponsive. You don't want to slow down a good process because somebody's out of the office or on vacation or in a meeting. You can set up alerts and notifications to remind approvers. You can set up alternates to approve in the place of the original approver. And you can also bypass levels of approval if needed, all with a full audit trail if approvers are being unresponsive. Again, it's all about making sure the approval process continues. And then who are your approvers? I mean, this is going to be different for each company. Not all purchases require the same level of approval or review, but typically there's a purchasing agent or a buyer. There's certainly the requester's manager. If you're maintaining budgets, you've got a budget manager, maybe a controller or a CFO. If you're working with a project application, you can bring the project or manager into the process. And then for those larger expenditures, maybe you need to bring in the legal department, the CFO, the CEO, or for IT purchases, maybe you bring in somebody who's an expert on the IT side to be a part of the process. So you need to make sure that whatever system you're using, and when you look at your rules, that you've got the flexibility to have all of those people be involved when needed. And again, budgeting can be a key component. When I was on the industry screen earlier, I talked about nonprofits and state and local governments as an example. When you're able to compare requisitions at any point in the process to a budget that you've established, get a warning when you're over budget, route for approval when you're over budget, you add another level to the overall process to allow you to control and manage your spending. So that way they're able to know where you are within the budget. You're able to address that before the actual purchase is made. And again, you're giving visibility across the entire process to know what the impact on the budget is and what you may or may not need to do to keep things moving. And then you want to make sure that after you have the process in place, you just don't leave it alone. You don't become complacent with it. You review it. You understand where it's working, where it's not working by continually monitoring it. There's metrics and there's reports that can show you how long it's taking for the spend to go through, how long it's taking for somebody to approve it. Use that information to make your process better. What types of requisition are taking the longest to approve? Who is taking the longest to approve? Are there maybe too many people involved to approve it? In most cases, having a lot of approvers doesn't necessarily mean you're adding value or savings. You can decrease the number of approvers, shorten the cycle without necessarily impacting the controls that are in place. So always review the limits and workflows that you established and then tweak those as needed to make them better and more effective and more efficient. Because the approval process is a fundamental and vitally important step in the procurement cycle. It's a step that you can make easier with an automated solution. And again, you're essentially managing by exception rather than having to manage every single thing that goes through. And when we talk about approvals, a lot of this stuff happens behind the scenes. You don't necessarily want the requester to be worried about this or maybe even know everything that goes on with this. But from an approver standpoint, notify the approver via email. Allow there to be alternates to approve in somebody's place. Add approvers during the process with ad hoc approvals if somebody else needs to be involved. Remind the approver if they forget. bypass the approver if they really forget for a long time, allow them to easily approve from within the email, from a mobile device, and again, unlimited rules, and have those limited approvals be available at the line level on pretty much any field that's a part of the requisition. Mobile approvals have become very popular and actually critical in recent years. This is one of the areas that we focused on a lot when we look at what we've done with our past couple of major releases is mobile functionality, mobile capabilities, and approval is certainly one of those. Be able to see and approve from the mobile device on your to-do list, being able to add notes when you approve or disapprove, and then be able to have visibility and the action of approving or disapproving on your mobile device either sends those requisitions back to the requester or has them go on to the next approver. So enabling the mobile capabilities is very important to increase the efficiency. And then there's several things that you may not necessarily think about when you talk about procurement processes and the approval processes behind it. I mentioned earlier on that if you have catalogs and shopping lists, then maybe you can eliminate levels of approval and have items move faster. You can also add vendor contract capabilities where you're able to track spending or enforce pricing with your better vendors. So if somebody needs some ballpoint stick pens, they're going to get those pens that you've negotiated with the best vendor at the best price, rather than being able to go off and buy just any pen, often at a more expensive price, or maybe from a vendor that doesn't have as good of a relationship with you. And then be able to have visibility to what's being purchased from that vendor to, again, tweak the contract if needed. But ultimately what you're doing here is making sure you're going to get the items at the price that you negotiated from the vendor that you negotiated that information with. And this can be automated so that as soon as somebody requests those pins, they're going to enforce the contract. Or you can also have it so that they're able to select the contract on a manual basis for each of the lines. And then bring vendors into the process. Again, we're very tightly integrated to the back office financial system. So the financial system is the system of record for the vendors as well as the GL accounts. But we got a lot of requests through the years for users of our application want to be able to enter new vendors. So what we've allowed you to do is add a vendor approval module to be able to enter the vendor from within our application, put in the vendor information, have it also route for approval before it creates the vendor over in the ERP system. So now we're not only talking about approvals for the transactions, we're also talking about approval process for vendors as well to enable and have those controls in place. And one of the areas that's most critical from the actual ease of use side is guided buying catalogs. When you can get the vast majority of your purchases from preferred suppliers, you're able to maximize your buying power and able to better negotiate pricing. So you got to make it easy for the shopper to buy from those preferred suppliers with guided buying catalogs. You can organize catalogs by vendor, by department, by functional area, by type of item, or any other meaningful grouping. And you're able to have predefined vendor items, pricing, as well as accounting information. So you're allowing the user to easily select from the catalog, but you're also defaulting information in from that catalog so they or somebody else don't have to worry about entering it. And the catalogs offer a simple and intuitive interface for users to select those items and then automatically submit them and have them route for the approval processes. So when you look at guided buying catalogs, these are often internal catalogs. These are catalogs that you can customize by vendor, by location, by type of item. You can get a download from the vendor, and that can certainly be helpful in creating the catalog. You can also create your own catalogs. And then once those catalogs are shopped and you check out from your shopping cart, you can automatically generate the requisition. And this allows your procurement department to establish preferred supplier agreements in addition to what I talked about on the vendor contract earlier. You can put those items onto a catalog. You control the catalogs so you know that it's the right pricing and the right vendor. And then you also enable an easy buying experience for the user themselves. And then you can take catalogs to the next level. There's a process called punch out. and many vendors out there support punch out functionality. With punch out, the overall advantage is that you allow the vendor to maintain the catalog for you as their customer. You log in behind the scenes from within the requisition or procurement application. You shop, build your cart, check out from your cart, and that item now gets pulled onto the requisition, and it must be approved before the PO can be created, and then those items ship to you. So punch out is a different type of catalog. You don't have to keep up and maintain it. The vendor will do that for you, but you still get the benefits of the relationship with the vendor, the right items at the right pricing. And then extend this out to the mobile device as well. Not only can you approve via the mobile device, you can also shop those internal buying catalogs from the mobile device, as well as enter requisitions directly from the mobile device to be able to then create a shopping cart, or even go ahead and create the requisition and then have it route for approval. And then ultimately, excuse me, you're looking to bring your spending or even more spending under your control. You can't manage what you can't measure. The saying holds true in the procurement department. If you break the rules that you've set up for spending by bypassing the requisition and purchase order system through unvetted suppliers, you're doing what you call Maverick spending, which is, again, getting forgiveness rather than permission. And that can be quite costly for organizations. So employees believe that the purchase is too small to matter, so they don't use the process. There's no formal process in place for those transactions, or the process is too cumbersome, so they attempt to bypass it. Management only focuses on the bigger spending items and doesn't enforce or manage the smaller items, and then those can add up. So by putting in an e-procurement solution, you're able to save money by keeping the requisition process and associated approvals straightforward, sensible, easy to use. So employees are more likely to follow the process, meaning you'll bring more spend under control where it's measurable and manageable. And then budgeting. I talked about budgeting earlier. This is a key component. It could be GL budgets. It could be project budgets. It could be budgets that you set up by department or by vendor. But this allows you to, throughout the whole transaction, enforce those budgets, have visibility to the budgets, view the impact on the budget if you're allowed to, and then see that at every step of the process. Again, this is key in many of the different industries that we work in, but this is also one of the most popular aspects. So as soon as a requester enters a requisition, if it's over budget, you can get a warning if it's over budget. You can route through a separate approval process as it's over budget. And again, if allowed, you can show the impact on the budget there and then allow somebody to make informed decisions about whether or not it can move on. And then once you get those things in place, the different approval processes, the ease of use, the catalogs, now you can start adding more robust functionality. There's always comments that can be added to a requisition line or comments that can be added to a requisition, but maybe you want to know more. Like, for example, you've got a new hire and that new hire needs a laptop, and you give them flexibility to be able to say what size screen do they want, how much memory would they like, what size hard drive do they want, that type of thing. Well, you can configure questionnaires for them to be able to answer those questions. Just because they answer the questions doesn't mean they're going to get exactly what they want. But if you're allowing them some flexibility, then you can create questionnaires to get that information and then allow you to, again, be more responsive to those needs, as well as have the information that you want in order to be able to make the purchase. And you want to be able to monitor everything throughout the process. Metrics, reminders, to-do list, reports, queries, dashboards, all enable you at whatever user level you are by your security to see the information that you need to be able to see and access it. We touched on AP or accounts payable a couple of times. When they have visibility to the original requisition to know that 3 quotes were provided and the best quote was picked and that it was approved properly, it makes them easier to pay that invoice, which again is going to pay the vendor quicker and allow you to improve the relationships with the vendors. And then have audit capabilities throughout. Be able to see the details of a requisition, what's changed, who changed it, when they changed it, so that you know what's going on with those transactions and be able to report on that as well. And last couple of slides here, I'll give you an idea of where organizations, again, based upon some research we did with PayStream, want to be able to focus. And you can see that controlling, spending, and supplier negotiations are very big, as well as spend visibility. So these are other organizations that were asked, what areas would you like to see the greatest improvement in your process? And these were the answers there. So look for a solution from any procurement side that can handle all of these and allow you to focus on the ones that are most important to you as an organization. And this slide here gives you a really good idea of the cost and then in turn the savings that can be recognized. So a novice organization is one that does have a process in place, but that process could be paper-based, Excel-based, or email-based. So you're not taking advantage of integrations, you're not taking advantage of validations, and you certainly don't have visibility to every transaction. You can see what the cost can be. When you talk about mainstream is you have implemented more of an automated process, you've got approval levels, you've got the requisition and procurement handled, but you may not have brought in the accounts payable department yet. And then innovators are ones who have adopted the whole entire process and are tweaking that process. So you can see there's some pretty significant numbers here and some pretty significant savings that you look at. And at the very end of the presentation, I'll show you a link to a calculator where you can get a little bit information and details about that. And with that, I'm going to quit with the PowerPoints for a few minutes and actually go into a demonstration of some of the things that we've been talking about. So I'm going to switch over to my browser window, which I use Chrome as my preferred browser, and then walk through some of the functionality. Now, obviously in today's webinar, I don't have time to go through every single step in the requisition process. We are more than happy to do a day in the life of a transaction as it goes through as needed. But again, for today, I'm going to focus on some of those key areas that we mentioned and give you an idea of what those may look like. So first off, I'm going to log in as a user who has access to most of the things that we do. So over here on the left side of the screen, you see a lot of different options. So these options are based upon what this user has been allowed to do from their setup within workplace security, and it certainly is configurable by user. And even within each of these, there's other options that you can manage and can control as well. So even though this screen has got a lot of information on it, please understand that this user has access to a lot of the different things that we do. But here's those to-do lists that we mentioned. What do you need to do? What's waiting on an action from you? Here's those catalogs that we talked about, both internal catalogs as well as punch-out catalogs immediately available to the user. Here's metrics that you can view, so you can see a lot of different information about where those items are in the process, how long it takes items to go through, and then have access to many different metrics so that you can present those not only on the main dashboard, but then also drill down and be able to see that there. And again, these are key components or key areas where you can gather information. So even in my demo, the request to order cycle time is 32 hours and 12 minutes. And you can see some other status. So that allows you to have the information to be able to tweak your processes and do better with them as the items flow through. And then your outstanding transactions. Let the user see at a glance where their transactions are, what has happened to them, what needs to happen to them as they flow through the different steps of the process. Allow them to drill down and see more information and more details about where those transactions are. And then there's reports and queries that you can run as well. So all the information available from the dashboard, and you can begin working from there. So I talked a good bit about internal catalogs during the PowerPoint, and I've got a couple of internal catalogs here set up by types of item. So I'm going to click on office supplies. This allows me to see pictures and descriptions and pricing of items. It allows me to view additional information about those items and then build a shopping cart. So one of the pieces here is what we're doing is we're allowing the user to have a common shopping experience. A shopping experience like what they may have in their day-to-day lives as a part of their business process. And you can shop multiple catalogs. So we've got multiple catalogs here. We can go out and add more items to my cart. We're ultimately building that cart, reviewing that cart once we're done to update or remove items, and then creating a requisition from that cart. So you could have the shopping experience be only the catalog. And as soon as they're done, then the process is over. They can move on to the rest of their job and then not worry about where those transactions are unless they want to come back in and look at them. But for our demo today, I had that shopping cart go ahead and create a requisition for me because I want to touch on a couple of other things here. So first off, you can see that the first two lines on the requisition came from that internal or guided buying catalog. There's a lot of information that can be here. It's totally configurable by user. You can hide fields, make fields read only, default values into fields, make fields required, and any field that is a lookup or zoom can be restricted by user. So you can only see your GL accounts or your vendors or your departments or your items based upon how you're configured. So this is a situation where you either want to be able to allow them to enter additional information and details, or maybe even do other types of shopping. So I'm going to come up here and we're going to click on Amazon for Business. So Amazon's one of my punch out vendors. Popular punch out vendors can also be office supply vendors like Office Depot and Staples. They can also be healthcare vendors like McKesson and Henry Schein, but many vendors out there now support punch out. This is the punch out for me as Amazon's customer. So behind the scenes, I've logged into that site and you can see it's a very familiar shopping experience. I can go in and shop. I can add items to my cart. I can continue to build the cart, except when I'm done building the cart, you see it says submit these items for approval. What the punch out process does is it enables the shopping experience like you're used to in a day-to-day life. But now when I click on submit those items for approval, it's going to pull that item or items into my requisition system, and it's going to require those to be approved before the purchase order can be created. So now that line is going to be here on the requisition as line number 3. It'll route through whatever approval processes are established before the PO can be created. And then once the PO is created, it'll be sent electronically to the vendor, Amazon. That'll complete the transaction, and then they will ship you those items. So line number 3 comes from the punch out capabilities. There's also shopping list or favorites list. These are very flexible options that you have for regularly requested items. So these can be set up by user, by department, or made available system-wide. Click to select the list that you want to shop. Here are the items that I typically request when needed for computers. I'll go in and put in what I want to get. This time, I'll load those items, and those items are now loaded onto the requisition. So you could shop other lists if needed. You could continue to add items to the requisition from other shopping lists that are out there and continue to add to this requisition. But now we've got a requisition with 5 different lines on it, and those items came from different methods of shopping. You can also duplicate requisitions, pull up a past requisition, duplicate it as new, make any changes, additions, or deletions. You can import requisitions in a CSV template format, and you can continue to add items to the requisition either by manually inputting the information, so that if we needed some cleaning services and you needed 2 hours of cleaning services, then type that information in, and then as long as you meet the required fields, that's a valid line on that particular requisition as well. So now there's 6 lines on the requisition entered in many different ways. I show you that for a key area that I talked about during the PowerPoint presentation. We offer unlimited levels of approval, unlimited approval paths, and approval by line. So you can see that each line here can be treated independently. Line 1 and line 2 don't necessarily have a vendor or a GL account code at this point. So if we know that information, we can come in and add that information. Now remember, it can be defaulted in. So if the catalog had that as a default, then it would already populate it here. But that's not necessary in this demo instance. Line 3, there's your vendor, Amazon, because we punched out to Amazon. And then line 4 has a GL account code because we defaulted it in. So what I'm showing you here is the flexibility for each line to have its own information. with our levels of approval, we're going to make sure that every line is fully approved based upon what's on that line. And yes, a single requisition can create multiple purchase orders if it has multiple vendors on it there. So add the flexibility for a user to create their requisitions without having to worry about, is everything for the same department? Is everything for the same vendor, or is everything for the GL account? But then up here on the upper right-hand side, give them mass line capabilities. So if there are common values for all of those and they need to make an addition or change, let them make that addition or change and then have it populate there. So again, flexibility for the user to make it easier for them. And then when you need to, add more information, name the requisition. So if this requisition is for a new hire, put that detail in so that other users know what the requisition's for and can also query those fields as well. Allow them to have attachments. So you can attach files at the line. So if you need to be able to attach quotes, or if you need to be able to attach pictures, whatever the case may be, click on the paperclip at the line level or at the header level, browse the drives that you have access to, select a Word document, a PDF file, an Excel spreadsheet, and attach that. And then have the icon change as your indicator, and then also have an inline attachment view. These attachments will remain throughout the entire process. Other users who have access to the transaction will also have access to those attachments to get the additional information and details that have been provided there. So again, when you need to provide more detail, when you need to provide more information, give the user that capability. You can also add comments. There's comments for each line. There's a vendor comment where you can say, I need these as soon as possible. There's internal comments where you can provide additional information, longer descriptions, special instructions, or even justification for the request. So these are to be done before the new hire arrives on Monday, or whatever the case may be. Add the comments at the line level. And again, those can be viewed by any of the other users and have the indicator there. So that's a 6-line requisition with different information and different details. I spent a good bit of time here. And even though I spent a lot of time during the PowerPoint talking about how simple things can and should be, I also want you to know that for those power users, for those situations where you don't have something that can be on a catalog, or you need to be able to enter it, maybe it's different every single time, or there's something a little bit different about it, then have that capability as well. And then no matter what, once you're done, submit the requisition. And when you submit it, it'll route for approval, unlimited levels of approval, unlimited approval paths, and then you're able to view the details here to see what the path is for that approval, who does it need to go to, if there were any alternates enabled, and then a log, date, time, user of everything that happens. So just those few minutes there on those couple of screens covers a lot of the things that we talked about. Ease of use, flexibility, configuration, but then also visibility and auditing there as well. And if we go back to our main dashboard, you'll see there's my outstanding transaction and that it's waiting for approval in that particular example. So that's a lot of what we offer from a requisition entry standpoint. Now, as I said early on, extending that functionality out to the mobile device has become very important within the industry. So from your mobile device, and here's an emulator here that I've got, allow the user to shop catalogs. So I can come in here, I can shop the catalogs, I can select items, I can build a shopping cart. I can shop multiple catalogs just like I did on the browser-based screen. I can select items and I can continue to build and add items to my cart. So I can do that while I'm on the go. And then here's my shopping cart right here. If I leave that shopping cart alone, then that shopping cart's going to be available when I log in as that user on the main dashboard there, and I can finish it up later. Or you can go ahead and create a requisition from the shopping cart on the mobile device, and we've now created requisition number 227. So that would be able to create the requisition via the catalogs. You can also create a requisition by coming in and adding information manually, typing your description, your quantity, your price, your expense type, having attachments, and those would also become a part of the cart. So manual entry of the requisition via the mobile device there. And then also approvals. having the ability to come in and approve requisitions on the mobile device and be able to see those and then be able to approve or disapprove with notes. Disapproval sends items back. Approval sends item throughout the process. So again, act on those. And then once you act on those, you can approve from that mobile device as well. And then again, visibility to all of the transactions that are out there so that you can see a history of your transactions, not only on the browser and the mobile device that we had, but then also on the mobile device as well. And again, that history is available for that particular user for all of the transactions that they've entered, and you can see those details. So we've extended that functionality out to the mobile device. Now, I mentioned earlier on about attachments, or excuse me, emails that go out. So we've got emails that go out. Emails go out allowing you to know when you have items. Oops, sorry, let me grab a different one there. To know that when you have items that are pending your approval. So you'll get an email notification. You can see links in the email. Click on the link in the email. It'll take you into Workplace and allow you to approve or disapprove. You can also reply to this message. One of the very popular ways to approve is from the email that you get. So there's a bracket here. If you put a Y in the bracket, you're going to approve everything on the email. If you put an N, you're going to disapprove everything on the email. And then at the line level, you can approve. At the line level, you can also disapprove with notes to the requester. So you can actually send this reply and approve or disapprove without logging into Workplace. So again, this is all about improving the efficiency of the process. Approve from the mobile device, approve from the email, and keep things moving. But if you need to, you can certainly log in and approve from the browser as well to get additional information and additional details there. So a couple of the capabilities that we offer from that particular side, on the requisition. We also do offer, as a part of our overall process, the ability to use OCR in order to have the information be pulled in for the invoices. Now, I know there's quite a few AP automation solutions out there, and you can certainly use other AP automation solutions when you're focusing on invoicing. But one of the things that we've always focused on is doing the procurement process that we just did a few moments ago, but then now adding the capability to capture those invoices. And then once you capture those invoices, have them be read and then automatically create the transaction. You don't have to use the invoice capture functionality on our particular side. You can also enter that information manually, but I do want you to know as a part of the process that that is available. And you can drop files here. You can drop files into the queue. You can email files into the queue, and you can also monitor an FTP site as well to pull that information in. Once items are in the queue, there's an agent that runs in the background to monitor those items and determine if any corrections need to be made. So in my demo, I'll click on refresh a couple of times here to get this one processed through. But in real life, you simply would have the agent monitor it, and then when it did need to be acted upon, or if it needed to be acted upon, get an email or have a metric that would be able to show that. Again, from our standpoint, this can be a part of the overall process. You're going to enter the requisition in our system. You're going to create the PO within our system most often. You're going to do receiving and invoice matching within our application. And just as a natural extension of the functionality that we've offered for years, the OCR is a component that can be used for that. And then we could also integrate to other third-party OCR systems as well, depending upon what's needed. And you can see that as they come in, if you need to make corrections, you can make corrections. So you can add or change any information that may be here. Once you make the corrections that are needed, you can save or submit, and then that transaction will be created over within the Workplace application. So the idea is that you scan and read the invoices that come in, and then you still create the transactions. You create a check request so that that check request can then be routed for approval for non-PO invoices. You create an invoice that can be matched to a PO or whatever the case may be, and then that allows you to continue to flow through. So that's another component that's offered. Again, keeping in mind that throughout our entire procurement process, whether it's requisition, purchase order, change order, receiving, or invoice matching, we do offer the approval processes. Also, there's many times where we can modularize the offerings that we're talking about and enter the information just from a requisition to PO standpoint. Again, it's very flexible in that particular regard. All right, so I know that was a quick demonstration, and I went through a lot in just a couple of minutes. I did want to give you an idea of the look and feel of the solution, was my overall intent there. And again, we can always go through a much more detailed demonstration as needed, and we would walk through a day in the life. We'd enter a requisition, approve the requisition, create a PO, receive an invoice match. But before we open the floor for any questions towards the end here, I do want to cover a couple of other things. So we do have a procurement calculator. The procurement calculator is out on our website. Our website is www.paramountworkplace.com. There's actually a blog here that covers what I just covered in the 5 ways to save in the procurement process. We also have other blogs, many other blogs that are available out there, whether they're for specific industries or other ways to save. And then the reason I originally started, we've got the calculator. So you can actually come out here and you can use this calculator that we partnered with Level Systems on, and you can come in and enter your information. So how automated are you currently? What is the average salary of your requesters and your approvers? Now, we give you industry averages, but you could change that and then put in your own. How many approvers per PO? Again, industry averages too, but you could always change that. And then how many purchasing agents do you have? How many purchasing managers do you have? And then how many monthly requisitions do you do? Same thing on the accounts payable side. How many clerks? How many managers? And then how many invoices do you process? So you can enter your own information based upon industry averages or your actual details, and then click on submit. And then when you click on submit, it'll give you what your anticipated current cost is, what your cost with automation could be, the overall savings based upon the number of POs, and then also the number of invoices. So you can see that this correlates to the information that I shared on the PowerPoint slide earlier. And then you can also come in and get more details similar to those infographics that I used for the manual, and then as well as the automated procurement there. So there's a lot of information on our website that you can drill down and get more details on, in addition to what we've already covered today. So please make use of that. But we're also always available to provide additional information and additional details and assist you along with the help of your partner to get what other details that you might need. And with that, if there are any questions, we can cover those at this point in time. But first off, I do appreciate everybody's time today, and certainly glad that you spent a little bit of time with us to learn more about our solutions.
Thank you so much for that, Foy. We do have 2 questions. One was about the size of organization that this procurement process would be best suited for.
Okay, yeah, no. So yeah, good question. I did talk about the industries. I didn't really talk about size. Our smallest customer has 3 users. Our largest customer has more than 4,000. So it's really applicable to almost any size organization. It just so happens that some of our smaller customers tend to be project related, and or they tend to have remote offices and remote locations. So they wanted to recognize the savings for large, big spend items and be able to centralize that. So you almost have to look at what is it in your organization that you're buying. So if you're a small organization and you only have a few employees and you're essentially only buying office supplies, maybe not as applicable, or you won't see as big savings. But if you're a small organization and you're buying very expensive products, very expensive things that you need to be able to do your business, then that could certainly help, especially if you have remote offices and remote locations. We do tend to see the most of the time the user counts are in the 100 to 200 range from our standpoint, but please don't let that scare you off. Anybody that has remote offices, remote locations, big amounts of spending and needs the controls can make use of it. So it can certainly span all different sizes of organizations.
for that. And then the other question we had was, what does the implementation process look like, or how long does it normally take for
Sure.
a small or medium-sized business?
Right. So most of the time, what we would tell people is we would say 3 to 6 months. So we would tell people that that would be the overall amount of time from start to finish. So from the time that the software is ordered through the end of you being able to go live. A lot of that's dependent certainly on time of year as well as the amount of time that the customer is able to dedicate. But I would say 3 to 6 months. We can certainly do it in the 3 months. For most organizations, if you're focused, provide the resources that are needed, but and rollout could certainly take you out to 6 months there as well. So I would say most of them, as I think through the question, would be closer to 3 months, but I would throw the 6 months out there just to set the proper expectations.
Thank you very much. Those were the two questions that did come up during the presentation. So.
Okay. Well, no problem. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to do the webinar. I certainly want to thank everybody. And then if there is anything else, feel free to reach out to us and let us know.
Thank you so much, Foy. Hope everybody has a wonderful day.
Thank you. Appreciate it.